Welcome back to The Explainer. If you are constantly buried in dashboards and metrics, well, you are absolutely in the right place. Today, we're looking at a fascinating framework from Dr. Marcito Donasapuetro on data quality. To make this really tangible and fun, let's explore these principles by imagining we're running a bustling, everyday coffee shop. We're going to see exactly how to filter out the noise and brew up some real insights.
Okay, let's dive into this. We live in an age where we can track literally everything, right? From the exact second a customer walks through the front door to the micro movements of a barista behind the bar. But the foundational question we have to ask ourselves right out of the gate is this: is all that data actually worth processing? It's a super tempting trap to think that merely collecting more data automatically guarantees better business decisions. But in reality, hoarding data without a strict filter just creates a massive headache and a ton of confusion.
And this brings us right to the core thesis of our explainer today. Dr. Donasapuetro states, high-value data yields reliable information, but not all collected data is worth processing. Think of data as the raw, vital ingredients for our coffee shop. Just as you wouldn't ever brew an espresso with unroasted, defective beans and expect a perfect cup, you simply cannot feed low-quality data into your business strategy and expect reliable information to come out. We have to ruthlessly evaluate our ingredients before we start brewing.
Section 1. 3 rules of quality, brewing better decisions. Let's get into it.
So how exactly do we evaluate those raw ingredients? Well, Dr. Donasapuetro outlines 3 mandatory conditions our data must meet: precision, comparability, and validity. If your data fails even one of these checks, your resulting strategy is going to be flawed. Let's break them down one by one.
First up is precision. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it demands absolute consistency across repeated observations. If you measure the exact same thing 3 times, do you get the exact same number? If the same source is used to observe the exact same case, the output should not waver at all. It is all about strict, unyielding consistency.
Bringing this right down to our shop floor, precision means the data recorded at the cashier must perfectly match the physical goods actually handed to the customer. So if your system says you sold 50 lattes today, but your physical stock shows you've used enough milk and espresso for 70 lattes, well, you totally lack precision. There's a major variance there. You simply cannot make reliable inventory decisions when your cash register and your actual bar counter are telling you 2 completely different stories.
Moving on, the second rule is comparability. This rule demands clear accountability and strict standardization. Why is that so crucial? Because without standard measurements, management hesitates. You just can't confidently steer a business if you aren't absolutely sure you're comparing apples to apples. If leadership is looking at numbers gathered using totally different methods, they're inevitably going to experience doubt when it's time to make an objective call.
For example, when we analyze a chart of our espresso sales, last week must be totally comparable to today. If last week we tracked the number of cups sold, but today a different manager decided to track the total ounces of espresso poured, we've completely lost comparability. There's no standardized baseline anymore. Standardizing how you measure ensures that when you see a sudden spike or a dip in sales, you know for sure it reflects real business performance, not just a random change in how the data was gathered.
The third and final rule of quality is validity. And honestly, this is where so many organizations stumble. Validity dictates that your data must have the exact usefulness required for the specific goal you're trying to achieve. It is entirely possible for data to be flawlessly precise and highly comparable, but completely invalid. Technical accuracy simply does not equal strategic usefulness.
Let me give you a perfect example of this trap. Imagine a shop manager meticulously clicking a tally counter every single time a pedestrian walks past the front window. They might have incredibly accurate, flawless data on foot traffic. But if their actual goal, their mandate from ownership, is to calculate the monthly net profit of the store, that pedestrian count is totally invalid. It doesn't matter how meticulously accurate the count is. It has absolutely zero usefulness for the specific goal of calculating the bottom line. You always have to align the data you process with the specific outcome you're trying to achieve.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 2, classifying your data, organizing the pantry.
Once our data passes that rigorous quality control, we have to organize the pantry. We need to logically group it in our information systems. This table outlines Dr. Donasapuetro's 3 primary classifications: by type, by nature, and by source. Understanding these 3 buckets helps us build an information architecture that makes sense to literally everyone in the organization, from the newest barista to the head accountant.
Let's focus first on classifying data by type. This category is entirely about the physical action required to capture the raw numbers in the first place.
We divide this into two distinct methods: counting and measuring.
So the crucial point is understanding the difference between these two physical actions. On one hand, we have count data. This is discrete. You are literally tallying whole units, like the number of distinct customers who walked into the cafe today. 1, 2, 3, 4 heads. On the other hand, we have measure data. This actually requires an instrument and captures continuous values, like checking the exact water temperature used for brewing our espresso. Your system needs to handle these inputs differently, because one represents whole items, and the other represents varying degrees on a continuous scale.
Next up, we classify data by nature. This categorization separates the descriptive, human element to the business from the hard, cold math. We split this right down the middle into qualitative data and quantitative data. To illustrate this, think about qualitative data as the glowing, written customer reviews, the narratives, the feelings. It tells you exactly how people feel about your coffee. Quantitative data is the hard reality, the nominal sales figures, and the actual cash sitting in the register at the end of the day. It tells you how much coffee you sold. A really smart manager realizes you absolutely need both the qualitative feeling and the quantitative math to get the full picture of the business.
Finally, we define our last category, classifying data by source. This simply categorizes the information based on where it originates relative to the physical and organizational boundaries of our business. Basically, is this data generated inside our four walls, or is it coming from out there in the world? And this brilliantly illustrates the divide. Internal data involves things you completely control, like your staff payroll lists, your internal inventory counts, or employee schedules. External data involves forces outside your walls that still impact you, like the global market price of Arabica beans or shifting government tax policies. Your system absolutely has to distinguish between the internal metrics you create and the external market forces you just have to react to. When we pull all of this together, the big picture becomes incredibly clear. Reliable information, the exact kind of organizational intelligence that allows a business to thrive, scale, and serve amazing coffee every single day, well, it doesn't just happen by accident. It is born systematically. It happens when you rigorously enforce those three rules of quality: precision, comparability, and validity, and then carefully organize the results by their type, nature, and source. That is the secret to transforming raw data into high-value information. So as you look at the endless dashboards, spreadsheets, and reports in your own work today, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. You undoubtedly have the data. The numbers are definitely flowing in. But is it the right data? Is it precise? Is it comparable? And most importantly, is it actually valid for the goals you are trying to achieve? Thank you so much for joining me to explore this framework today. Take these principles, audit your own metrics, and I will see you on the next explainer.